China Watch Radio is brought to you in part by Sushi Market Sprouts on 7th in Santa Cruz and Kaito in the Capitol Mall Food Court. Treat yourself to the finest Japanese cuisine you'll find anywhere with fresh sushi to go and delicious ramen dinners. Sushi Market Sprouts and Kaito. Yum!
Tongjimen, 我们在轰轰烈烈的站起来. Well, that's some Chinese that I learned when I was studying under the reign of Chairman Mao.
And that translates to don't eat the yellow snow?
Yeah. It says, comrades, surging with fiery enthusiasm, let's stand up to the world.
Oh, well, there you go.
Something like that. So at any rate, welcome to China Watch Radio. It is the 23rd day of June in 2022. I can still say 19, that far away. So today we've got a bunch of great stories. We're going to start off with a pundit's selection, in which each one of us grab a story and put it on the table. And then the second half hour, we're going to look at what Billy Graff loves to say about following the money.
Yes.
And there's a lot of stories about Blackrock in this week's news. So we're going to look at Blackrock and see what it's doing with respect to the money it collects from all of us and the impact that has on a relationship with China.
And if you've just joined us and don't know who Blackrock is, it's a company, an investment company, and they invest more money than any other entity in the world. And recently, about 2 months ago, they entered into an exclusive agreement with China to invest in China.
Well, yes.
Sort of.
We'll
tell you about it.
At any rate, that's what we're going to be looking at today at Blackrock, and that's in the second half hour. And, of course, the second hour is going to be yours. And we have a question to put on the table for you with respect to the second hour and Blackrock. And that question is, if forced to choose a side, would Blackrock choose China or the U.S.?
That'd be an interesting answer.
There you go. Which one would it? Yeah. So
we sort of, just prior to the program, we sort of made an inside joke with John T. Collier, who joins us from the trees. We said, "You're up first," and he went, "Me? What? Me?"
Well, we had to wake him up.
Hi,
so, John T., you want to go first?
So, first, with regards to, I mean, you guys know that what I was going to report on is probably, I don't think I've ever been scared to do a report before, but I've got to be really careful with this one. Now, one of the things that Michael Olson and I found ourselves doing, in the last 2 weeks, I can't remember exactly when, was we like to go and find people who actually disagree with us. If you really want to try to prove your perspective or test it, try to find somebody who has a different opinion. And we actually found some guy on YouTube who was saying that the lockdowns in Shanghai aren't that severe at all. It's a bunch of whining foreigners who can't get their blueberries, and it's really nice when you find people who test your perspective and they are complete idiots. This guy was not very good. He was not very good. It was really all hyperbole and ad hominem, so not much substance there. And he was probably getting funded by his friends in China, where he was staying. So I came across an interview conducted by a YouTube channel called Redacted, an interview of a lady by the name of Vanessa Beeley. She's a British independent journalist living in Damascus, Syria. And she's got about 10,000 followers on Telegram. I don't really know how she makes a business out of that. It's what Clayton Morris and his wife. I think he used to be a Fox commentator, but he left because they just weren't allowing him the freedom to report what he wanted to report. So now he has actually a very interesting YouTube channel. So at any rate, Vanessa is nothing like our YouTube friend we found the other day. She's extremely intelligent, well-researched, and she has a very different opinion of the situation vis-a-vis relations between the West and China, and particularly with regard to the Xinjiang province and the situation with the Uyghurs there. She said a bunch of things I've never heard before. I should point out that she mentions in the interview that she's not saying she agrees with all of China's policies, but as a journalist, she's working to expose what her country, the United Kingdom, is doing in terms of ways in which our contemporary mainstream media manipulates us. Now, I think if you say to somebody, mainstream media is manipulating you, there are very few people that are going to say, no, that's absolutely not true. I mean, at this point in time, I think everyone's got a pretty good sense of that. I think after the whole weapons of mass destruction scenario in Iraq, the majority of the population has at least accepted the possibility that mainstream media is somewhat manipulative. But she goes into some detail as to how news gets to us from Xinjiang province, or at least in terms of what's going on there. I want to just point out, I don't necessarily agree with everything that she's saying. I can't prove it at this point in time. She said so many things in this little piece of media here that it would take weeks of research to refute or prove the stuff that she's saying. And it would be very difficult to do that because there's a whole lot of information out there, let's put it that way, to sift through. But she makes some assertions here, which I found quite extraordinary. Now, first of all, she describes a situation where we're going to talk about the sort of follow the money situation later. So we interview really fascinating people who will talk from personal experience about the horrors of the Uyghur internment camps and the oppression that's happening in that area. I do sometimes wonder, how the heck do you guys make a living doing this? Is it through donations, or are you just doing this on the side, or where does the funding come from? Now, she asserts that the pro-Uyghur organizations receive funding from the National Endowment for Democracy, which is a sort of government organization. A lot of people, not just her, I've heard allege over the years that the National Endowment for Democracy is very closely related to the CIA. They kind of work hand in hand. They're sort of two sides of the same coin. And she suggests that the NED is an organization that'll go into a country that the CIA wants to change the government of and start funding, quote unquote, pro-democracy in such a way as to have those those new out of nowhere pro-democracy forces who suddenly have a bunch of money and training, helps them, overthrow the government in some way. So that's the sort of allegation about that particular organization. Whether that's true or not, I would advise anyone to be objective and do their own research. Geez, there were so many things that she said. She mentions that there's another organization which is closely related to the NED called Victims of Communism. It was founded by Bill Clinton in the late 90s. It was sort of started by Zbigniew Brzezinski. Dear God, I'll never be able to say his first name, who I think people have heard of. Lav Dobransky, who's a sort of Banderite-related Ukrainian, and somebody named Adrian Zentz, who's a devout anti-communist. I think, if we were to get Adrian Zentz on the show, that'd be fascinating, I got to say. And so there's this organization of folks who are they're part of the Washington blob, and they heavily influence what the NED does. The NED then funds, this is according to her, these Uyghur organizations that talk about how absolutely horrible everything is that China's doing in Xinjiang province. How am I doing, guys? Is this okay?
Hang on. I just need you to clarify something for me, if you would. Are we saying in a roundabout way that somehow the CIA is funding the idea that the Uyghurs are being persecuted? In other words, we're making it possible for their story to get out from money from the CIA. Is that what we're trying to say?
I don't know that we're saying that.
No. Well, I mean the story is what I'm saying.
But that's an aspect of the story. She describes a situation. She actually goes all the way back to the First World War and says that at that time, Otto von Bismarck, the German ruler, was actually attempting to make a connection with the Uyghur population to incite them to fight against the British and French, saying that that population has been strategically placed for a long time, such that there was an intention to try to influence them in one way or the other. And one of the things that really surprised me that she said is that Uyghurs in particular have been recruited mostly by Saudi Arabia or actors within Saudi Arabia into organizations which are then ISIS and Al-Qaeda, which are then used to attack the government of Syria or do various other destabilizing things all over the world, something I'd never heard before. She said about 10 to 20,000 of the fighters in Syria hail from Xinjiang province.
Johnny, do you think that if such was indeed the case, that the Chinese Communist Party would not be putting that on the table and saying, look, these guys are terrorists all over the world, but they're not?
Well, that's a very interesting point, Michael, and that may very well be something that lends evidence to the contrary. She did mention a series of terrorist attacks in China, in Afghanistan, in Bangkok, and in Syria that she said were conducted by Uyghur extremists. Obviously, the same old rule applies. This wouldn't be all the Uyghurs. It would be the ones who were radicalized. And she suggests that what China's doing there, which she doesn't excuse, but she says that the reason why they're doing what they're doing is that they're trying to eliminate extremism.
Well, yeah, that's what they're trying to do. But then what is an extremist? Anybody who disagrees with you is an extremist, right. And there you go.
Well, to what degree it begs the question: to what degree would our society tolerate a program that was intended to limit extremism? If we had a real problem with terrorism in a certain region or with a certain group, what would our society do to try and mitigate that?
Good question. Well, now it seems to me that we actually almost propagate terrorists with the recently canned district attorney of San Francisco. Came from a family of terrorists. And here he is, the district attorney of San Francisco, letting everybody out of jail. So there, at any rate. Thank you very much for that one, John T. I'll pick it up with a story about the loss of black soil. This from Gateway Pundit. Epoch Times. And it's a story of Heilongjiang province, which is in northeastern China. And it has an area rich in black soil. 107 million acre parcel of land rich in black soil. Now, this is not the same terra preta of the Amazon. This is the rich black soil in which China grows most of its grains. And so they've been doing... Now, I'd like to take you back to the year 1900 in China. There were 400 million people, all of whom were fed by small farmers with no modern technology, growing on the same land that had been farmed for 4,000 years. How did they do that? Pretty clever stuff. Well, what's been happening now in China, as they have moved to the modern technologies, they've been mining the soil to death. And now this beautiful 107 million acres of black earth is losing 30% of its productive capacity due to the loss of both minerals, to the loss of
nutrients,
organic matter, and to the nitrification of the soil with overuse of fertilizers.
From over-agriculture?
Yes.
Over-farming? Yeah.
Over-farming it.
Well, also, they completely changed, as Michael alluded to, they completely changed the way they farm. You know, traditional Chinese farming, like traditional American farming and traditional farming in England, other places around the world, you replenish the soil as you go. You put back the nutrients in naturally.
You sustain the soil.
You know, that's what compost piles are all about and stuff like that.
And occasionally rest the fields.
Sure, you rotate.
Yeah.
And yet in China, what they have been doing is cashing out the soil. And so they have cashed out the soil. Now, this leads to a really interesting phenomenon, which is hunger in China. China has now purchased and stored 1/2 of the world's grain because their soil no longer supports their population.
And this poses a ginormous problem if you know anything about storing grain.
Because it goes bad.
It goes bad quickly if you don't store it right.
That's right.
And so Xi Jinping ordered a survey of their grain stocks. And so they sent officials out into the country to examine these grain silos. And what happens? They're catching fire. They're burning up.
Yeah.
And which is to say,
hard to measure grain. That's
they're
conflagration.
hiding the evidence, right?
Right.
Now, what this leads me to ask is, we know that China and Russia are working together now, and I look at Russia's invasion of the Ukraine, which is like the breadbasket of the world,
Yep.
and wonder, is this invasion of Ukraine to feed China?
Well, I saw an interview from the UN head of the hunger program, and he was saying that more than half of their stock for wheat in particular comes from Ukraine.
Well, I read an interesting statistic that said that if you look at it another way, every loaf of bread ever made has grain in it from the Ukraine.
Yeah, it's interesting because growing up, I was always taught that, we were the grain breadbasket of the world. And it's just really interesting how that's actually pivoted. Because, years ago under communism, the Soviet Union couldn't produce enough grain.
That's right.
Now under an open market system within the Ukraine, they're actually the world leading supplier, which I found fascinating.
And we have to remember what happened
That's
to...
not right.
What's that?
The US, I think you're not quite getting the numbers right. Russia produces more grain than the Ukraine, first of all, and I think the U.S. still is the leader in grain production. I'll look it up, but Ukraine is about third on the list.
Look it up. I think
Well,
Russia,
even if Ukraine-
Russia and the Ukraine combined, I think, produce the most grain in the country.
But think about what Jonty just said. If Ukraine is a country that up until the Putin war started, we really weren't paying too much attention to, really, on the world stage, let's be honest. If Ukraine's 1, 2, or 3 in grain production in the world, that's a fascinating figure to me.
Especially when little as the 70s or the 80s, how they couldn't produce enough grain to feed themselves. What a transformation. And
it was because of the socialization of agriculture in Ukraine and caused by Stalin's great Holodomor, where he forcibly took all the land from the Ukrainian people and installed collective farms on it. And that was what really...
So, like the degradation of the soil in China, how much is driven by government policy? The same kind of communist...
the government policy was to industrialize everything. And so instead of having farmers
family
out there,
farms.
Instead of having family farms, you have industrial farms.
That's right.
You use big tractors like they do in America, and you use lots of fertilizer.
You don't put the droppings from the farm animals back into the local soil. You put in petrochemicals to enrich the soil, and it really doesn't enrich the soil if you know anything about.
Well, what it does in essence.
The same way.
There's two ways of feeding a crop. One is to feed the soil and then allow the soil to feed the crop, which is the way the farmers of 40 centuries maintain their soil.
Right.
The other way is you bypass the soil processes and feed the plant directly with soluble fertilizer salts. They're like injecting drugs into your veins. Go straight to the plant and bypasses the soil. So China has bypassed that soil. To heck with it. Who cares? We just add more fertilizer.
Right.
And so what's happening is that soil is degraded. China is short on food. Who has the capacity to feed China?
Well, who can push back,
China
right?
can't even feed China.
China can't feed China. So how can they get control of a land?
Well, you've made a great comparison, a great observation that recently China has made a pact with Russia.
Right.
To access grain, yeah. But what's interesting though is in the United States, we've had a lot of pushback from industrial farming with the whole organics movement and people wanting to, right? So there's been there's a kind of a yin and yang, right, of trying to self-correct any type of extremes. There doesn't seem to be that in China.
And also the self-correction that you allude to in the United States. I'm here to tell you there are vast more chemical farmers in this country than there are
I agree.
The organic farmers you're speaking of.
But there has been a significant pushback, especially from consumers.
Yes.
That's where the pushback is coming from.
Well, that's the way it has
I don't
to-
want to eat that stuff.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
want to eat
that's how
that
it's. That's the only way it'll change.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Michael, after you mentioned to me that some large Chinese agricultural firms had purchased Syngenta, I read an article about that, and one of the things it mentioned is that Syngenta has been performing dismally because the Chinese don't want GMO crops. There's very low adoption of GMO in mainland China, apparently.
And they talk about suspicious people about their food.
Oh, yeah.
The Chinese are, by and large, very suspicious about what they're being fed.
Well, they buy GMO from us, but they don't want it grown there for whatever reason. But guys, I got to let you know that we don't know what we're talking about with regards to exporting. I got two things: wheat exports. So Russia's number 1, U.S. is number 2, Canada number 3, France number 4, Ukraine number 5. Way down the list. And then the other one I've got here is top food exporters: United States. Netherlands? That surprised me. This is
the Dutch.
This is per value, though, in billions.
Yeah.
So I imagine the Dutch exporting within Europe, I'm guessing. And then Germany, France, Brazil, Ukraine, and Russia not even on the list in terms of top exporters by crop value.
Well, see, this is why we keep Jonty around, because he has all the correct stats.
That's right.
That's it, up there in the trees. That said, my question still stands.
Sure.
Can China take over the Ukraine vis-a-vis Russia and get the grain it needs to feed itself? Just a question. Have no answer, but I have a question. We better take a break.
We'll take our scheduled break, hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back for more of our discussion today on China Watch Radio. Satisfy your hunger right now with the delicious ramen and sushi you'll find waiting for you at Kaito. Easy in and out location in the Capitola Mall food court. Special orders welcome. Fresh, delicious, and oh so good.
This is Koji. I'm looking forward to seeing you at my restaurant, Kaito.
We're headed for the warmest weather of the year. I'm Charles Friedman. Before you turn on that air conditioner up to max, give a thought to the safety of all the electrical circuits that keep you cool. Best way to check on the safety of your electrical circuits is with the help of Chris Jensen and the staff at JM Electric. Chris, what should we be watching out for?
Thanks, Charles. It is really important to be mindful of the electrical circuits that power air conditioners. Any electrical leak from these circuits is a real fire danger. You may not be able to see the electricity leaking from the circuits behind your walls, but JM Electric's state-of-the-art testing equipment can find them. And JM Electric is happy to help folks out with a free home assessment to see if the current safe testing service is right for your home. Give us a call at 422-7819.
Go straight to jmelectric.com and take the home electric safety test. After you answer 12 yes or no questions, you'll have a good idea about how safe to feel. If you don't feel safe, call JM Electric and ask for a free current safe home assessment. That's JM Electric at 422-7819. You'll sleep well at night.
Hi, this is Boring Jeff of the driver's seat. And we're racing into KSCO on Fridays from 2 to 4 to cover cars, including racing cars, sports cars, collector cars, and anything else with a radio in it. We suggest that you tune in here at KSCO 1080 AM, and you can listen to the show also on KSCO.com. Driver's Seat, Fridays from 2 to 4. Join us for the fun.
Do you ever wonder if you can know the truth?
Jesus said, "You can know the truth, and the truth will set you free."
So dwell on truth with us.
Sunday at 11 a.m.
I'm Daniel Bodwin.
And I'm Brenton Powers.
We're Christians and missionaries.
And we'll be answering your commonly asked questions from the Bible about God and humanity and salvation.
So join us for the Dwell on Truth show, every Sunday from 11 a.m. to noon here on KSCO.
Back in the 70s and 80s, there was a legendary Sichuan Chinese chef and good friend of mine named Francis Tong, who made a lot of friends with a lot of people in Santa Cruz and the Monterey Bay area. Chef Tong's restaurant in downtown Santa Cruz was incredibly popular, not only with locals, but it soon established a reputation far and wide as the restaurant for unique and innovative Asian food, created and served up by a most delightful and charismatic chef and owner. Some of the KSCO audience will remember Chef Tong for the amazing, fun person that he was. Join Chef Tong's son, Tom Tong, and me for a program all about his dad on the next KSCO special this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon, right here on your dedicated to bringing you great stories to bring smiles to your faces radio, AM 1080 and FM 104.1 KSCO.
Well, folks, those are Chinese war drums. And this is China Watch Radio, the second half hour of the first hour. And it's Billy Graff's turn. And he has a story about war drums, I guess. Right, Billy?
Not drums, drones.
Drones.
Now,
and
this
drones.
is really scary. This is, look, first, I'm fascinated by this story. You want to stop the United States military, particularly the Navy? You know, you can torpedo them, I guess, if you really want to, from a couple of miles out. You could, drop some sort of bomb on them and destroy the ship that way. But the easiest way to slow a naval ship down is send a whole bunch of drones and swarm the ship. And it confuses the radar, and it confuses the guys looking at the radar, and it confuses the guys who are in charge of the guys who are looking at the radar. It confuses everything.
Has this happened before?
It has. And here's the really interesting part of this story. This happened... well, the public was really speculating about this because there were rumors going around, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So after all this intense public speculation, under the Freedom of Information Act, a bunch of people got a whole bunch of information about this topic. And basically what's happened is, off the Channel Islands of Southern California, when the Navy has ships out there doing maneuvers all the time, they're practicing stuff. Apparently, several incidents of there's no other way to describe it. Drone swarms flying around these ships, confusing them.
Where was the origin?
California, the coast.
So the Chinese launched drones off the.
No, not the Chinese. Oh. They don't know exactly who's doing it, but they think it's like a local group of amateur terrorists, basically, who aren't out to get the Navy. They just want to harass them. They just want to see what the Navy's going to do, right? Several of these swarms have taken place off the coast of Southern California. Now, the interesting thing about this is such a part of the local, I want to say, culture, that a very prominent television program, NCIS Los Angeles, a show that stars Chris O'Donnell and LL Cool J, and a bunch of other really well-known actors, right? They have featured already 3 episodes on this topic.
Wow.
And so it seems to me this has entered like popular culture now. It's on TV.
Well, it's interesting. Michael and I are both pilots, and it's one drone will shut down an airport real quick.
You bet.
Especially when it gets up to pattern altitude.
Well, I think what is it about? It's above 1,000 feet, right?
Yeah, 1,000, 1,300, depending on the airport.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about the Channel Islands, as you guys know, Catalina, the most famous Channel Island, where Avalon's a city, and they it was once owned by Wrigley. Had the Cubs out there for spring training a number of years ago. There's buffalo out there. It's a really famous place to go for a vacation, right? Off the coast, 26 miles off the coast.
That's right.
Well, you can fly
26 miles across.
That's what the song's. That's what the song's about.
Santa Catalina is waiting for me.
Please don't sing anymore. Okay. All right. Wow, you just
MC,
entered.
thanks for
You
joining
just
the
entered the
program.
Michael Swerling category. Here's the thing: these drones in a swarm can fly out 26 miles, 30 miles or so, fly around, hassle the Navy, and fly back before they run out of juice.
We know what's interesting about what you bring up, Billy, is that these drones don't even have to be armed.
No.
They just have to be a nuisance and occupy
Right.
airspace.
That's right.
Fascinating.
And the thing, the Navy ships, as you guys know, Navy ships, they're heavily dependent on things like radar and sighting, lasers and all that kind of stuff. The modern warships use all this technology, and if you get a big swarm of drones, it's like a big thing of birds flying
close in, right? Grabbed by the belt buckle, and they can't do anything.
And a duck will take out a 747.
Yeah.
An interesting follow-up on that, Billy, is that when China launched its new aircraft carrier...
I got that story right here. Here it is. Yeah. Satellite images show on the deck of the newest aircraft carrier that China sent out, not little drones that I'm talking about that you can swarm with, but I'm talking about bigger drones that can carry missiles. And the interesting thing about these Chinese drones on this Chinese aircraft carrier they're lined up like from one end of the flight deck to the other in these pictures, in these satellite pictures. And these aren't little drones. These are, drones that are big enough that have pusher propellers, that push the plane instead of pull it. And apparently these drones are set up so they, the American equivalent of these drones can fly for hours.
Well,
so...
incidentally, their effectiveness in any kind of contested space is probably pretty minor. I was reading something the other day about how the Ukrainian pilots are just saying no thank you to U.S. Not Reaper drones, but it's sort of the equivalent. I don't remember what it is, because they're saying they're not going to make it for more than 1 or 2 missions. They'll just get shot down.
Well, I've heard that. I've read that same story myself, but we all know about the stories about in Iraq, how effective the drones really were.
Yeah.
Control from outside of Barstow or somewhere where they had
right.
They were they were shooting blown up stuff in Iraq.
What's interesting about your story, Billy, is that China basically has a clean sheet of paper to design a navy. We've reported on this program.
They have all the best technology America can make.
And to optimize it. We've always been good at fighting the last war in this country, and they seem to be positioning themselves for kind of what's next. And they've been thinking at a different threshold as well, not just beyond the supercarrier. But how do they swim and defend and maybe even extend offensive missions within their own lake or the area that they consider their lake in the South China Sea?
Yeah, good point. Anyway, I just thought I was fascinated by the story. I wanted to bring it up just to show you that you can slow a modern naval ship down with 150 drones all synchronized. You can write a program to make them all swarm and fly the same way and do all that.
Probably all of them together added cheaper than the cost of one missile.
I'll tell you what's really interesting about that story is that nobody who knows is saying where the drones come from.
That's correct.
Exactly.
That is
to
correct.
me is what's fascinating.
That's fascinating too.
I actually read a really interesting article a little over a year ago, and Billy, I'm sorry I didn't dig it up and send it to you in regards to the story, because it was somebody talking about there's a new term for UFO. I think it's unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Yeah.
And what they argued in that audience, much to my disappointment, because I was going to hoping they would say it was aliens, what they argued was that the various militaries of the world are developing all kinds of different drone technology, and that if you see something weird off of the deck of a naval ship, there's a good chance it's one of your friends or not so much friends who are testing out their ability to keep an eye on you with technology that you're not familiar with.
Yeah. And just as a sidebar on the story, and then I'll let the next story come up, but they are now making drones the size of mosquitoes with cameras.
Isn't that amazing? I saw that story too. It's shocking.
And when you think of a drone, you don't think of a drone the size of a mosquito that can actually take a reasonably decent photograph or picture or send video. But apparently they are not that far off.
Well, Billy, taking your story maybe a step further, as you think about a swarm of locusts instead of maybe small airplane-sized drones, what you could do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what fun. And speaking of what fun, we'll move on to the next story, which is about Blackrock. And as Billy was mentioning earlier, Blackrock is an American investment firm. More correctly, it's an aggregator.
Yes,
which
that
is
is
to
correct.
say they aggregate money from different pension funds and whatnot, and they collect it all, and then they invest it in various things. Now, one of the biggest in the world is Blackrock, and is run by a guy named Larry Fink.
I think it's the biggest now. I don't think it's
$10 trillion.
Yeah, it's a pile of money.
And principally, that money comes from us, from
investments.
our.
Do you have a retirement a retirement plan?
Absolutely.
Guess what?
Yeah.
It's probably managed in some part by Larry Fink.
Exactly. Yep.
So that's what happens to most of our retirement funds, whether we work for the government or whatnot.
State of California.
I think BlackRock has the retirement funds of 3 different states.
Yes.
But at any rate, when you have all of this money, what the heck do you do with it? Well, what Larry Fink has been doing with it is investing in China.
Well, he pulled off, the first thing he did was he pulled off the first and only deal.
No, that's the latest thing he did. That's not the first thing.
No. Well, I mean, the first thing he did regarding what you just said is he's established his firm legally with China.
Yeah, we reported that a few weeks ago, which I thought was fascinating. Yeah.
So what the reason Larry Fink and others have been investing in China is that China has been paying a greater percentage in interest on their bonds.
Well,
if you buy a bond in China, they pay you 10% or something like that. If you buy one here in the United States, you get 1 or 2%.
If you're lucky.
So, in essence, the United States and its pension funds have been building China. And with all of our money has been going into bonds that are used to build what? Ghost cities.
Well, we've also reported on this program the construction of 45 coal-fired power plants funded by BlackRock.
Where do you think that money is coming from? It's coming from the people who are complaining about coal-burning power plants here in the United States. Yeah. And it goes on and on and on. So, as Billy was mentioning, BlackRock is so into China. They call it Larry Fink, all in China Fink, because he is all in on China.
Well, it's his latest investment idea that seems to be working out so far for him and his company.
And what Billy was alluding to was Larry Fink has been given the right to establish the first, and I think the only
one,
mutual fund.
That's right.
Owned by an outsider.
Yeah,
That's
Billy
right.
reported on that a few weeks ago. Yeah.
So this has been on the table for a while here. Now, it has come time for the Biden administration to appoint somebody to watch over our relationship with China. So that is the story right here. The Biden administration has picked Obama's former national security advisor and current chairman of BlackRock Investment Institute, Tom Donilon, to lead the administration's relationship with China.
I thought you were going to say paging Hunter.
There you go. Well, paging Hunter, yeah. So BlackRock is now in charge of formulating the United States policies with dealing with China.
Wow.
So you have Larry Fink, the main boss,
Yeah.
investing in China. You have one of his underlings, who's the head of part of one of the divisions of his company, is now in charge of what Larry Fink is doing.
Yeah.
Now, Donald has been chiding. He was up against Trump's efforts to rein in this relationship we had with China. So, Trump instituted policies where you could not invest in Chinese military businesses.
Yes.
Well, Donilon went up against that in a big term. And what he wrote in China Daily, which is the mouthpiece of the CCP, this from Tom Donilon, the head of BlackRock. He said, future generations of Americans will judge today's leaders harshly for squandering this moment to work more closely with China. Donilon also wrote that tariffs against China are hurting U.S. businesses, consumers, and farmers, and that they are alienating U.S. allies, and analysts warn they are increasing the risk of global recession. So
it's the same free trader stuff we've been hearing for years.
So what some observers say, is that BlackRock's Chinese entanglements, its investments in China, have raised concerns about the company and its relationship with the United States. So, my goodness, the company has come under fire for investing in sanctioned Chinese companies, including giant surveillance companies and whatnot. But here's the really interesting thing. Even the progressive mega donor George Soros called BlackRock's investments in China a tragic mistake that would damage U.S. national security.
Well, look, here's my thought. If you've got a company that's in charge of investing in, like, pension funds, like if you're a teacher and your pension fund is being looked after and invested in and
it's being invested in Chinese ghost cities
by BlackRock, and they're investing in the Chinese military. Mm-hmm. How does that? How could you not look at that as counter U.S.
or in coal burning power plants?
Yeah, if you're look, let's bring it home. If you're a teacher working in the Santa Cruz school district, right, and you're all into the climate, trying to help the climate, save the earth, right? And your retirement fund is investing in coal-fired power plants in China. How does that jive with your general?
Well, even putting more of a practical edge on it, you're paying $6 for gas to do a rapid ecological conversion instead of 3.
There you go.
Yet China gets to burn coal.
And China's burning coal. And not only that, now, one of the things that I've been watching in China very recently is that the banks are running out of money.
Well, yeah.
And the banks are not, one of the big, huge banks in China is only allowing people to draw $150 a day maximum. So if you have a business...
Well, you know what we call that in the United States?
It's a run on the banks.
Insolvency.
Yeah.
That's the word.
Yeah.
So now...
Your bank is not solvent.
So now, how much of America's pensions are invested in insolvent Chinese projects?
Yeah. I'm going to carry that just one quick step further, which is what happens if there's an issue with Taiwan and we wind up having sanctions?
Well, just complicate the discussion a little bit.
There you go. Yeah. Well, but wait a minute. Now, who's going to recommend sanctions And who's going to institute them?
That's my point.
You got Donlan you got the CEO or the chief investment guy for BlackRock running America's policies. Is he going to say no?
Let's refer back to my grandfather for just a moment.
Follow the money.
Follow the money. Now, if you follow the money, probably the scenario you just spoke of, Michael, is not going to help the United States, because if you follow the money goes to China.
Well, we've heard, too, that in China they've been inoculating themselves against sanctions, right? And is this a possible ploy if you put pensioners, incomes at risk?
Here, U.S. pensioners.
Exactly.
And so I'm curious, I would love to know how much of the funds, of the pension funds of Americans given to BlackRock have been invested in these insolvent projects like ghost cities. And now we see that China is going to reach a 5.5% increase in their gross national product this year. And how are they going to do it? By building stuff.
Yeah.
Now, where are they going to get the money?
I believe that's an artificial figure.
Yes. Where are they going to get the money to build this?
They're going to print it.
No, they're going to borrow it.
Take it from us.
They're going to take it from us.
And they're going to print it.
And
I think they're going to do both.
Are we going to get paid back?
No, of course not.
Why should they pay us back?
If I could just add a layer of depth to this situation. So this, then I forget the guy's name. This guy, Tom Donlan, is made co-chair of the Foreign Affairs Policy Board. The Foreign Affairs Policy Board is an advisory board, and they have a bunch of current members. Amongst those current members is a Apple executive, a executive at Alphabet, a managing director from Goldman Sachs.
Oh boy!
And then I'm just looking here, and almost every single other person in here. Former chairman and CEO of MTV Networks. Almost everybody else in here is some kind of policy wonk, Washington D.C. person who almost every single one of them was part of George H.W. Bush's cabinet, interestingly.
Mm-hmm. So these are the new world orders.
The decision makers.
These are, incidentally, Tom Donlan is a member of the, the New World Order company, the World Trade Council or something like that.
Yeah, the World Trade Council.
What kind of disturbed me was when you were reading the article, Mike, earlier, where you had the analyst just talking about, tariffs are bad, this is bad. It's like, I just kept thinking about the captured elite again, and that there's this book that they're singing from.
Captured elite, exactly.
It's like, this is the dogma.
It's interesting that I am politically divergent from you two folks. I don't know where I stand in respect to Jaunty, but I understand that I'm quite a bit more liberal than my co-hosts on this program. But I have to tell you, on this particular topic, when we're talking about financing, we're talking about money. We're talking about the United States government, this scares me as much as it scares you guys.
Absolutely.
This isn't the U.S. government.
No, that's what worries me.
This is Larry Fink of BlackRock.
Well, and his
ilk.
Yes.
Driving policy.
Yeah. And they're all getting together and they're making these policy recommendations in air quotes, because it's more than that. Mm-hmm. And you go, wait a minute,
because they have been captured by
they're investing like teachers' retirement and firefighters' retirements in the Chinese military.
Who has Larry Fink been captured by?
Well, I think he's been captured by a number of people. If you really want to know my opinion,
wait a minute. If he were forced to choose,
I think
between the United States and China,
would
Larry Fink and BlackRock go with China, or the United States.
Would a globalist ever choose a particular country?
See,
Isn't part of the whole
I'm with
power there
Jonty on this one. I think
not
he
have to
hedges
choose
back.
a country to pit
I'm
one
with
against the
Jonty.
other when it conveniences you?
I agree, Jonty.
I'm with Jonty on this one. I think Jonty's right.
I think you're all three crazy.
No,
I think he's totally owned by China.
No. Look at all the money he's got from places other than China up to this point. No,
he's just taking the money from us and giving it to China.
He's got to keep them happy. He's got to keep those people
happy. Like I said, he would go with China.
No, I think I think he would hedge his bet. I think on this one you might be outvoted.
Well, that's just fine, but I don't care. Because I'm going to put it out on the phone, and I'm going to see what our listeners think.
But the other day, if BlackRock goes chapter 13, it's not going to hurt Fink.
Chapter 13, chapter 9,
So, ladies
chapter
and
8,
gentlemen,
whatever.
that's the question we have today. Do you think if BlackRock was forced to choose, would it go with the United States of America, or would it go with China? I think China, but my Confederates here think he would. Join the Boy Scouts or something?
No, I think he would just try to
surf the middle. He surfs the white space.
Yeah, surf the wave, man. Yeah. Surf both sides against the middle.
If he was forced to choose between one or the other, would he go with Would BlackRock go with the United States? Or would he go with China if he was forced to choose?
I don't think.
Or he moved to a country where he didn't have to choose.
You don't think?
Go
to Switzerland.
Move to Switzerland. Yeah. Then he's home free.
Yacht number 3.
All right, 831-479-1080 is the
we
phone
do have
call.
A call.
Well, we're going to pick them up after the top of the hour. We're going to
hang on, Joe. We're going to get to you after the top of the hour news. There's a couple of things we do need to remind you about. Jonty does an awful lot of work prior to every one of our programs, consolidating some information so that you can follow along with our sometimes strange discussions. Heated discussions. It's called ChinaWatchRadio.com. If you go there, there's all of the articles that we talk about. Every one, Jonty posts, and he organizes them so you can find them fairly easy. Jonty, is there a particular thing you're touting this week on the website?
Well, it's all kind of interesting. That video I watched was really quite extraordinary. And as I say, test yourself. If you believe X, then take a look at Y and see how X stands up.
There you go.
Billy, I'd like to add just real quick for a break. Sign up for the newsletter. You'll get one briefing a week. You don't get any push of advertising. It's really clean and tight, and Johnny does a great job with it.
Yeah, he does. It's an awful lot of work. So that's ChinaWatchRadio.com. One other thing you need to remember as we head to our commercial break, top of the hour, news and information, is this. A telephone number, 831-479-1080. Joe's called that number. We'll ask him to stay through the break, and then we'll take his call when we come back on China Watch Radio. This is KSCO Santa Cruz, Salinas, Monterey.
Wind becoming west-southwest 6 to 11 miles per hour in the morning. Boaters forecast for tonight, west winds 10 to 15 knots, wind waves 3 to 4 feet, swell southwest around 2 feet at 18 seconds. Tomorrow, west winds 10 to 15 knots, wind waves 3 to 4 feet, swell southwest around 2 feet at 17 seconds. The time now, 6 minutes after 3 p.m., and that means it's time for the second hour of China Watch Radio with Bill Graff, Michael Olson, Jonty Collier, and David Welch.
China Watch Radio is brought to you in part by Sushi Market Sprouts on 7th in Santa Cruz and Kaito in the Capitola Mall Food Court. Treat yourself to the finest Japanese cuisine you'll find anywhere with fresh sushi to go and delicious ramen dinners. Sushi Market Sprouts and Kaito. Yum!
Welcome back. This is the second hour of China Watch Radio, which means it's your time to pick up the phone, 831-479-1080, and have a say. You can have a say pretty much with anything you want, as long as it relates to our relationship with China, which is something we try to scratch our head over every week. What the heck is going on?
We're trying to figure it out.
We're trying to figure it out, and we're just schmucks trying to figure it out. We have no special insight other than the fact
you
that
speak Chinese.
I
I spent a few years in the region. So.
And David worked over there. And Jonty is an authentic Chinese spy up in the woods and somewhere.
You're ruining my cover.
So we are just regular folks trying to figure out what our relationship is with China. And it's a very puzzling one because if you think about it, China has, pretty close to 8,000 years to figure out how to maneuver things around, and how to run dynasties, and how to have court intrigue, and how to have unrestricted warfare, and how to capture elites, and what to do with them once you've captured them. And so we're looking at one of our elites. His name is Larry Fink. He runs an outfit called Blackrock. He has $10 trillion of our money, of our savings, our investments, our retirement. He has a lot of our money to invest. And he is all in on investing that money in China. And so we wonder, George Soros even wonders, what's going on with this guy? And so the question that I would like to put on the table today is, if he was forced to choose a side, and if there's anybody that could force him to choose a side, I suspect that would be the CCP. Mm-hmm. If he was forced to choose a side, which side would Larry Fink of BlackRock choose? Would he choose our side, or would he choose the side of the Chinese Communist Party? He has said that this capitalism is dirty business. It's messy. It can never do anything right, not like the Chinese Communist Party. So what do you think out there? He's got your money. What is he going to do with it?
We have folks who want to answer your question. Let's start with Joe. He waited through the top of the hour break. Joe, you're on China Watch Radio. Thanks for waiting.
No problem. Thank you, guys. 1,000% I agree with the gentleman that said he would side with China. You know, he's already in bed with them, from what you just explained to him. And I believe he would be more afraid of the consequences coming from China than from America, because I'm sure their army or their soldiers aren't, they're not worried about using the correct pronouns, while our military is. and I haven't lived that long. I'm 38, but long enough to notice that our country is slowly going away. It's getting softer and softer. I'm not saying it has to be the strongest, but it's definitely not going in the right direction, is how I feel.
That's a very interesting...
And if you have $10 trillion invested in China, I was really interested in the part you said their soil's so bad that they can't grow food. So what else do they have to lose? It's like, and I know they're buying a lot of our country up. Why wouldn't they come invade and to take our land? Because we have so much land ready to grow. Why wouldn't they? If you're on your last straw, why would you just sit out and say, what else do they have to lose? I guess my point is.
Well, because they can invade through the Blackrocks of the world, right? It goes back to the elite capture, right? They can capture our institutions, which then, force us to have these trade agreements that are favorable to send agricultural products back to China.
Would that be a lot easier than sending an aircraft carrier filled with drones?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. But yeah, so that's what I was thinking. I definitely think you would side with China.
I wanted to amplify on something that you brought up in a kind of a snide sort of way, and that was the fact that our Navy is now training to go up against China with pronouns.
In fact, one of the cable networks just released the Navy training film where they showed these two people talking about the pronouns and.
Yes.
Yes, I heard that about that.
And then not to use any pronouns because some people may be in transition and they may be uncomfortable stating. If they don't ask people for a pronoun, wait till they offer it to you because they may be in transition and make them uncomfortable.
So given that, I don't think China has a chance.
We'll pronoun them to death.
We'll out-pronoun them.
We can read a lot into that, and there may be reasons to have concerns about an organization that's supposed to be focused on defense, focusing on cultural issues, but we also
war's not a pretty sight. Last time I checked, and I don't think
we did just do the Defense Reauthorization Act, and it came out to something like $857 billion, about a $50 billion increase over last year, which my understanding is if you take all of the spending of the United States on the military, besides what's in that one authorization, it ends up being actually about 1.5 trillion. And it equates to the military spending of all of the other countries in the world combined. So the pronouns is interesting. It's a sort of culture war topic in terms of the ability of the United States Navy to have an effective deterrence and or to be effective in the worst case scenario as well. The United States Navy still displaces in terms of tonnage about 3 times the Chinese Navy, depending on what is considered part of the Chinese Navy. I will concede.
Well, John T., thanks for the information. Joe, thank you for the call. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Maybe it's not like a sprint they're thinking, though. They're just slowly like bullying the frog, little by little, weakening us.
Well, that's a good.
Is it them that's weakening us,
or is it us?
Or that's weakening $10 trillion of influence. The influence. You know, they're paying politicians and getting their way for the long run.
Well, some interesting thoughts, Joe. Thank you.
Thanks for the call, Joe.
No problem. Thanks.
Let's move on to Shane calling us from Melbourne, Australia, if I've got the right line there. Shane, you're on China Watch Radio.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Thanks for taking my call. And I love you guys. I love your thoughts and trying to work out the problems for especially future generations, because that's what we're really here for, I believe. But look, I'll just add to the confusion. In 2017, from the Mineral Council, this is from our records in Australia, we mined 1.075 billion tonnes of coal just to China. And right now we're in great sanctuary, where they've got, where they've taken, what do you call it, when they take sanctions against us. So we've got major problems with exporting now to China. But in that same year, it was, 59.7 million tonnes of gas went out of this country. This is just in 1 year. And then there's about 300 tonnes of gold, and I could go on about the list of the other things. We're the largest uranium miner in that year too, which would be, probably a lot of this stuff would be still going to China. Now, you've got to ask yourself the question, we're in $1 trillion debt. That 1 year is not just limited to the amount of exports that went to China to create their great military now and their pretty prosperous country. So what the question would be, why would the Americans, because you're the top military group, why would you allow all those resources to go to feed a group now who are very well armed, and they've got a very good nuclear arsenal, and that's sort of a confusing point to me, because why would we now be in a position where they've got sanctions against us, and basically we're in probably $1 trillion debt, and if you look who the debt we're into, I can't find who we're in the debt to. That just sort of goes to a brick wall.
Well, that's a very interesting thought, and again, I would point to those elite among us who have been captured by the Chinese Communist Party with money or the promises of money, or who knows, maybe some video that they got that's kind of damning. And they are the ones, I believe, who are telling us what to do. So if if that is true, that would explain it, why we're doing it. But if it's not true, then I don't understand why we would do it.
What I believe, Michael, is that it's like two kids in the schoolyard. There's some other factor here that sort of, I probably would say alien. There'd probably be some sort of alien problem here, because it doesn't make sense within the human consciousness. I think the Chinese are probably thinking the same thing you're thinking, but in a different way. We're the enemy and we've got this thing. So there's sort of like these two sides drawn up against each other, but generally we're both not profiting from creating another war or the instability, especially for future generations and the benefit of the human race. So my concern is, and I see this in subconscious, my perceptions in the subconscious generational conditioning. So I would say that the human race is definitely being infiltrated subconsciously, generationally, and these movements of our mineral resources are seemingly funding something else that we're not seeing. That's what my humble, dumbed-down Australian perspective would be.
What aren't we seeing then? What are we missing?
Are you referring, Shane? Are you referring to the idea that decisions are being made in a back room somewhere by elite power brokers, or what are you trying to tell us here?
Well, look, we know on the 17th of January, Oxfam International gave out a report about, through the pandemic, of what happened in regards to wealth distribution. Now, in this country, it says in this report, 47 of the richest people in this country, the billionaires, doubled their profits just in that 2 years. And the same as with the top 10 richest people in the world, which I must say, 8 of them are American in the report, this says, that they doubled their profits to 1.9 trillion. But taking all this money aside and the human behavioural side, I just believe that these people are probably the refined ones that are controlling for another body or another intelligence that seemingly is gathering the resources to create something that we're not picking up here. Like, as I said before, it's like two kids in the schoolyard. There's somebody else saying, oh, this guy told you this and we've told you this, and they're getting the sides always against each other. But really, there's another force within this.
So that's kind of like you're talking about the New World Order kinds of organizations that hide out in castles in Switzerland and stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, like maybe the organization like in Davos where they get together and plan, right, the elites. Is that what you're kind of referring to, maybe, Shane?
Look, I look at evolutionary, the evolution of the species, and I see the technological advancements of the human race is not in line with our real intelligence because we're not using it really wisely. We mostly put every year into military spending to kill our own species with. So as a modern Pavlovianist, I see that there's a deep problem within our subconscious, and I see the evolutionary maybe fact that we're primarily got a flaw within our subconscious instincts, but generally I think there's a high intelligence that's taken over our species. That's it sort of shuts at that door because this high intelligence has got a factor within, like today, tomorrow you won't remember most of this. You'll get it on the recordings, but generally when you woke up today, we're walking around mainly blind, most humans, and I work with, better care with certain technologies that are being exposed to new generations, which are very unsafe, and I give the people the science. But generally the people the next day have just, there might be teachers, politicians, a whole wide range of people. There is something wrong with our conscious ability to really address the serious problems we need to address for future generations.
Bad food, Shane.
Yeah, just give them more fentanyl and porn, and
there you go. Yeah, more fentanyl.
Listen, thank you for the call, and we appreciate your observations.
Thanks, Shane.
All the way from Melbourne, Australia.
Shane, always really appreciate your calls. You might appreciate. I'm not going to belabor our audience with this, but Blackrock, and that is a black cube, is an ancient occult symbol. Not to confuse BlackRock, of course, with Blackstone Investment Corporation or Black Cube, the private intelligence agency.
Or Black Earth, which is another subject we picked up earlier, but what the heck.
Oh, right.
That's right.
Well, speaking of BlackRock, Dick in Santa Cruz wants to address that particular topic.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
Yeah, the BlackRock thing, I thought it was interesting. that you mentioned how you were just talking to the last fellow there from Australia, that he was talking about people being trained and subconscious and all that stuff, and there's a lot of that in all over the world. Now, Soros and Davos Group, okay, they're not happy with BlackRock, so I found that very interesting.
Isn't that interesting? Now, what is going on there? Why is George Soros fighting with Larry Fink?
Maybe he's jealous.
It's all in your
Jealous?
subconscious.
Maybe.
No, I've explained this before. I'll go over it again.
All right.
Okay, there's competing opposite approaches to a world order. Now, Davos has a minimalist, reduce the population, roll out the green utopia approach, but you have to live in your little pod, and you get rid of the car.
Ride a bike to work, right?
And eat pretend burgers.
Yes, right. Tofu.
Eat tofu. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's very real. They say it over and over again. So,
no, we're green.
And then the Chinese. Okay, Chinese have their world order, which is basically they're kind of like caught between a rock and a hard place. See, they have people that want to make things and advance. Really, want to advance themselves. Full speed ahead. Forget about environmental regulations. Capitalist, basically all the way. But if he doesn't keep his population happy, they're going to get smart on him pretty soon. With the internet and.
What do you mean, capitalist all the way? You lost me there.
Okay. He doesn't care about.
Are we talking about Xi Jinping?
The whole, yeah, okay. Now, what they're doing is they're building all these coal plants, right? And while the rest of the world or Davos Group are saying, stop doing that. You're killing the earth, right? So they're at each other's throats over that kind of approach. But it goes much deeper, like I just explained. But, take, for instance, go back to the Australian guy. The cognitive dissidents in this country. Here we are, paying BlackRock with all the government and school retirement funds are going to BlackRock, and BlackRock is turning around and helping China build, really dirty, not with no cleaners on them, coal plants, right? And the teachers' unions and the government unions, they're mostly all. Into this green, right? The world order, we have too many population, too many people in the world, all that stuff. And so, and then you pointed out they pay $7 for gas to support this, and just suck it up. Somehow, they're in complete denial, or as our Australian caller would say, Pavlovian's dog, the subconscious mind's completely, they're just in denial. Mm-hmm. That we're for instance, Biden said build USA, right? USA built. What happened to that? There's our Congress. They're going to shut down some, buying of our land and our farmland. Did they do that? Did they stop China from buying all our farmland?
No, the whole build back better, right? Nothing's built, nothing's back, nothing's better.
Exactly.
So our whole government. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Dick. Appreciate your input.
Okay.
Thanks for calling, Dick. He does remind us of what we were talking about earlier, though, that if you follow the chain of events, Dick reiterates what we started the show with last hour: the fact that we are funding a foreign government to build coal-fired power plants and dirty up the atmosphere with our money after we've made it a point to not want to do that here.
Sorry, Michael.
We're basically farming the pollution off to another place so we can have cheap stuff back.
My biggest pet peeve in the political world, in the economic world, and the cultural world, and all of the worlds that we live in, is that we force our industry away from our country because it's dirty. And then we run down to the box store and buy made in China.
Right. You can't see the dirt.
Cheap.
It doesn't exist.
Well,
It's just
the dirt. We farm the dirt over there, and we farm the jobs over there, and we haven't helped ourselves.
You know what it is? It's nation destroying hypocrisy. And I think people who chase industry away because it's dirty and then run down to the box store and buy made in China because it's cheap should be rode out of America on a rail after being tarred and feathered.
Well, it's curtailing oil drilling here, but you're going to import it from Venezuela, which is the most filthy
oil in the world. I said this when we first started this program. I don't know how long ago now. It's a long time ago. I would be willing to pay a reasonable fee to buy a pair of Levi's made in America.
Absolutely.
I said this, but you know what it costs? They actually make Levi's in America.
Do you know
what they cost?
Like $100.
Wait a minute.
If you buy a made in America pair of Levi's with the original thick denim and the button-down fly and all the stuff that the 501s, the original jeans, they're like $400 a pair now.
Wait a
minute. I have good news in that respect. I got 3 shirts for Father's Day, and they were made in Madagascar.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, not China.
I couldn't believe it. I'm so happy.
I want to tie back together, though, a couple of things our callers, I think we've talked about earlier, which is there is something nonsensical going on. People can feel like that doesn't make sense. Like, why is BlackRock making these investments at this economic level? Yeah. Right? Why are we exporting our garbage and our pollution just to import products made by slave labor?
Follow the money.
Well, then we go back to the whole concept of elite capture. And we're being directed by people who have been captured.
But the whole notion...
Hold on, let David develop this. He's going somewhere here.
Yeah, I mean, the notion of 2 and 2 not making 4, right? That, and our leaders are saying things that don't necessarily, appear to be true or appear to make sense with what's actually happening in the physical world, right? The notion, I think, and I think Shane expressed it one way, and I think, Dick did another, which is, what's going on here? Like, is there somebody else manipulating this? Is this organized, or is it somehow some more different type of organic movement, or is it something that is... guys in smoke-filled rooms, or is it something that's just maybe spontaneously happening, right? Since everything's been so decentralized by the internet, there's a certain kind of zeitgeist in thinking that's evolved, that's maybe being teased along by China and the different programs that they have to manipulate and influence people.
I don't think there's anything random about it at all.
Yeah.
I just don't.
It's very well directed.
I think so.
And it's heading in a certain direction.
But the question of who's directing it, right, is really interesting.
It's obvious that somebody made the deal with those UFOs.
All right. On that note, I'm going to ask our 3 callers to hang on. Stay where you are. We'll get your calls in just a minute. We're going to take our bottom of the hour break, and we'll be right back on China Watch Radio.
Back in the 70s and 80s, there was a legendary Sichuan Chinese chef and good friend of mine named Francis Tong, who made a lot of friends with a lot of people in Santa Cruz and the Monterey Bay area. Chef Tong's restaurant in downtown Santa Cruz was incredibly popular, not only with locals, but it soon established a reputation far and wide as the restaurant for unique and innovative Asian food, created and served up by a most delightful and charismatic chef and owner. Some of the KSCO audience will remember Chef Tong for the amazing, fun person that he was. Join Chef Tong's son, Tom Tong, and me for a program all about his dad on the next KSCO special this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon, right here on your dedicated to bringing you great stories to bring smiles to your faces radio, AM 1080 and FM 104.1 KSCO.
Satisfy your hunger with a fresh, prepared, twice-daily grab-and-go sushi you'll find waiting for you at Sushi Market Sprouts, 2 blocks from the beach at 300 7th Avenue in Santa Cruz. Fresh, delicious, and oh so good.
Hello, I'm Junko, and I look forward to serving you at the Sushi Market Sprouts.
Mow, dig, haul, lift. The versatile Kubota BX Series subcompact tractor does it all. Switching attachments is simple, and a smooth hydrostatic transmission makes for easy operation. The Kubota BX Series. the #1 selling subcompact tractor in the U.S. for over 10 years. Talk to your local Kubota dealer today to schedule a demo. Go to KubotaUSA.com for full disclaimer.
C&N Tractors in Watsonville and Paso Robles makes it so easy to get a Kubota. Give us your tough jobs.
Hello? Hi, Grandma. How have you been? Oh, no, Grandma, not again. Sounds to me like you got hit with ransomware, Grandma. You see, Grandma, as you're looking through that celebrity article on the internet, suddenly you receive a dialog box saying they have control of your computer and you have to pay them to get control of the computer back. Am I right? Well, only one thing to do now. Take it to Peter and his friendly staff at User Friendly Computing. Let's face it, most of your computer problems these days start with the user being tricked into clicking on a link that contains a path to computer hell. User Friendly Computing will have you back on track fast. User Friendly Computing is locally owned at 505 River Street across from Gateway Plaza. Or you can give them a call at 831-423-9653. That's 831-423-9653. Are you interested in a radio show with tips and tools to help you unravel the mysteries of your personal finances? Would getting a firm understanding of the basic laws of money management help you out? Then listen to Money Moves on Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. Host Pamela Fugit-Hetrick and her guests provide information so that you can successfully manage your own money. Tune in to Money Moves Thursdays at 7 p.m. on KSCO AM 1080 Santa Cruz.
Welcome back. This is the second half hour of the second hour of China Watch Radio, which means we're talking to you. Billy, who do we have to talk with right now?
Well, who's been on the longest is Arthur in Prunedale. So let's push his buttons. How you doing there, Arthur?
Oh, gentlemen, I'm doing well. And as usual this week again, I'm really enjoying your program.
Excellent.
Especially the dialogue that you hosts offer. And you inspired me to comment on tie a few things together. Yes, China doesn't need to militarily invade the United States. They are slowly and surely using capitalism against us and taking over the country bit by bit with property, school systems, universities, industries, and so forth.
So you're talking about just influencing the levers
on that to an extent?
Yeah, just influencing the levers of power is what you're saying.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. There's power in control. We could not go to China and start buying all of their assets, all of their farms, all of their industries. The communist Chinese have a strong fist. Mm-hmm. They are organized. They have an edict and a policy of making China great. You know how Donald Trump used to say, MAGA, make America great again? Well, China is make China great again. And you got leaders who are so inept here, like our president says, come on, man. China is no threat to us.
Now, may I step in and disagree with you?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Just a real quick disagreement. I don't think China really has made China great again. I think the United States has made China great again. That's
okay. Can I retort?
Fire away.
Yes.
I think this is the current direction. Yes, President Nixon and a lot of our former policies have set the stage for China to advance to this stage. Now they've waken up and they said, hey, look at the power that we have. Look at the control that we have over our people. And those inept people in the United States, they are so easily buffaloed to cave in and sell us their products, to give us their technology, to let our students go to their universities. How many things? I can go on and on. It's a soft war.
Well, Arthur, I would add there's what's interesting is during the Cold War period, there was a moral compass the country had centering around the flag in our country, and that if you sold out at all, you were excoriated in public and private. And it doesn't seem to be that today. I mean, to your points that you were making, it's easy to capture somebody and buy them out, and to actually procure with cash, the influence and access that you need to, manipulate.
And people look up to you for doing that.
Exactly.
And they put you on CNBC.
Yeah.
And here is the great Larry Fink.
We don't have that today where it's like, what's good for our country, right? And then how will my fellow citizens judge me in terms of the decisions that I make of what's beneficial to our country? There seems to be a drive, after the Cold War to really think like, what's good for me? Or like, everybody's stealing a little, so why don't I get onto my piece as well, right? There seems to be kind of a moral... Go ahead, John.
Is that a tension between individualism and collectivism that we have? I know when you say the word collective, people think communism, but just think about our society in general. We have a substantial tension between individualism and collectivism, and we always have.
Yeah.
But we've had a much stronger traditional a collective identity. People belong to a community, belong to a church, used to be a big part of our society, and then
belong to a family.
And a family. If you hearken back to the Second World War and the types of attitudes that the soldiers had, I remember reading a bunch of letters home from the various different soldiers in the Second World War, and their understanding of the unique identity of the United States vis-a-vis our peculiar constitution and our desire to help people move towards liberty was really profound. I mean, these folks were over there because they loved democracy. And the postmodern exercise, as I understand it, has to do with dissolving all of the various pillars of society, which it such that you end up having a whole bunch of individuals who create their own identities out of their own whims, essentially.
That is a very good point, John T. What we've seen is that every effort is being made and has been made to dissolve the glue that holds society together.
This reminds me of going back to the 1960s when you hear always the hippies are always saying, bring it all down, man, because then we can rebuild it. And so many of our institutions, to Johnny's point, have been destroyed.
Yes. Families.
And there's no place, in the there's nothing that replaces it.
Church.
Right?
Community, the Lions Club, the Rotary, everything. Tear it down.
And what replaced it?
Nothing.
Well, that's
what John T was saying.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not necessarily. I mean, I don't want to come down too heavily on one side or the other in that regard. I mean, there were aspects to the 60s and 70s that I think were profound and beautiful and liberating in a variety of ways. But there's this tendency.
It was sex, right?
There's this. That's the best part. There's this tendency when we have a sort of revolution. There's this tendency to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Gentlemen,
I believe there's an aspect of that happening there. Mm-hmm.
Gentlemen, can I?
Yeah, so go ahead. Yeah.
I kind of feel very happy that I possibly inspired you for that former dialogue that you just engaged in.
No, you certainly did.
Okay, great. So we're on the same page. So now the question is, what do we do about it? We do not have the unification. We do not have the leadership. I think we lost the last president who was moving in the direction, call it Make America Great Again. I think this included awareness that we are not leading the world when an adversary like China is soft selling us and taking over our culture, our country, our prosperity. We need a strong leader, and I don't think Joe Biden or anyone in the Democrat Party and many of the Republicans are not.
Well, can I make a point here?
Go ahead.
Let me just make a quick point here. I understand what you're saying about having a strong president leader, but it also falls. Remember, there are three branches of the United States government, and the other legislative branch is abysmal. It's abysmal. We have horrible leaders on both sides of the aisle. They are horrible.
It's all Democrat.
No, I said on both sides of the aisle because I really believe if one side refuses to talk to the other side and they're sent to the Congress by the people of the United States to do their job and they don't do it, then I don't care how good the president is, he can't get it done.
Well, I would like to circle back there to something Arthur... something Arthur said, though, I think it was... just
Hold on, Arthur, just a minute.
Circle back to something, Arthur, you said earlier, and the team was talking about the 45th president. You know, a lot of people think that, you know, he was voted out of office because of some mean tweets, or he was a coarse man with coarse language. But he was actually pretty viscerally defending the institutions of the United States. And a lot of people have the opinion that he was actually attacked viciously because of that perspective.
That is my opinion. I think China took Donald Trump out.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay, we think so much alike, gentlemen. I must tell you, I love hearing your program because I'm on the same page as you three. Thank you so much.
Arthur,
yes,
thanks for calling. I have a full phone board I got to get to here.
Go ahead, bye.
Okay.
Thank you, Arthur.
Appreciate the call. Let's see, who's next?
While you're getting that, Billy, I just want to say to our audience, if you want a little intellectual exercise, take a moment, look up postmodernism on Wikipedia. Just read the first paragraph.
Oh, a good idea.
That is a good idea.
See if that gives you some perspective on
well,
on
you
where we're at.
teased us with it. Give us a thumbnail.
Okay, I'll read a little bit here.
Don't read it. Just tell us.
I'm gonna just say characterized by self-referentiality, moral relativism, epistemological relativism, as opposed to the former modernism, which had identity, hierarchy, characterization, and good old-fashioned, universally agreed upon facts.
Oh, there you go.
I love epistemological.
You can't even say it. Come on. All right. Neither can I, so don't feel bad. All right, let's go to Colonel Terry. You're on China Watch Radio.
Gentlemen, on the big picture of China, it's a tragedy. Larry Fink is appropriately christened with that last name, Fink. Blackrock is appropriately picked as his business name. And the tragedy includes the incompetence, failure, negligence of things like the California teachers and public employees, pension managers, whoever they are, to side up with both BlackRock and China and not monitor the Chinese investment involvement, etc. But it reminds me of so much I see in this state of the ineptitude of career and elected state officials and local county officials. The ineptitude, incompetence, and perhaps corruption on occasion is clearly manifested here. By the way, I talked to a friend of mine regarding BlackRock in Washington, and he reported that 5 years ago almost, Trump's Treasury Secretary Mnuchin was warned about the BlackRock Chinese connection, etc., and the threats to the pension funds. There you are.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask you something, Terry? Am I wrong when I think that? I mean, you spent a lot of time in Washington D.C. Am I wrong in thinking that our elected leaders just simply aren't getting it done?
Well, they're trying to. Look how, but
are they really? I don't think they're trying too hard.
I'm not a registered Democrat nor Republican. I'm in the smart wing because I know how corrupt both of them are. But candidly, the Republicans are demonstrating more sellout corruption. Not much more than the Clintons, but high. There's the tragedy. Look how they've sabotaged, and look at the failure of Trump's judges to enforce our environmental laws.
We're getting a little far afield, but
let me go back to what Billy said here with respect to the politicians not getting it done. The city of San Francisco is currently spending $106,500 per homeless person in San Francisco.
That's right.
Now, what are the odds that all of that money and all of that civic intellect is going to solve the problem? None.
None of it.
Well, it's a clear example.
I kind of rest my case.
We need to have recall. We need to have exposure.
We need to have a big fire hose.
We need to have
pressure washer. Yeah,
pressure washer.
We need elected people, and hired senior managers in government committed to good, competent, efficient government. not ideology.
Okay, I guess let me put it another way, okay? If our elected leaders, the guys we pay, they're our employees, okay? Let me give you an example. I'm going to give you a concrete example. A member of my family did not get one of the stimulus checks, and he contacted a local leader, a local congressman, and said, "Hey, where's my check? Everybody else got one. How come I didn't get the third one?"
Right.
And he went to check on it 3 months ago. And what do we have for an answer? Why he didn't get his check? Crickets, man. Go pound sand.
Well, he should have been a felon or living in Nigeria.
There you go. Yeah, except that if you're homeless in San Francisco, they're spending over $100,000 on you.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, wait a minute. No, that's not true. They're spending $105,000
per homeless
person, but where's that money going?
Okay. Right.
It's
Okay.
not
Right,
going
exactly.
to homeless people.
Okay, I rest my
now,
case.
I have
Again,
a question.
I rest my case.
I have a question for Colonel Terry. Colonel, if BlackRock was forced to choose between the United States and China, which one would it choose?
It's clear Larry Fink, like Donald Trump, only cares about himself. That would be BlackRock.
Interesting
By the way,
conflation there. I don't know how they got there.
Terry,
but
thanks for the
thank
call.
you, Terry.
I got a couple of more calls I need to get to.
Here, watch the commission hearings tonight. Please watch them.
I'll probably watch a rerun of MASH instead. Thanks, Colonel Terry.
Yeah, there you go. Reruns of MASH.
That's right.
You can watch it, Terry, and report.
All right, report back to us. Let's see here. Gary in Live Oak, you're on China Watch Radio.
Yeah, I'll try to sum it up. Anyway, again, I think your individual guest, we can't identify him by voice because of the conversations going back and forth. So this is no blame on any one person. But I know you had an expert from Yale over there, and he knew nothing about Yale and China. And that was created by Skull and Bones. They educated Mao Zedong. They gave him space to do his bookstore.
So who is Skull and Bones?
By the way, Steve Mnuchin is a member of Skull and Bones, and you guys can't get the slightest idea that Skull and Bones is from Yale. China is a Yale project. I heard somebody call earlier thinking that the China New World Order is different than, the Western New World Order. That's bull. We've controlled Red China, or China, for years. The co-founder of Skull and Bones, William Russell, sent the heroin to China. Then they set up Yale in China. They promoted Mao Zedong to perform what Rockefeller says is the most successful revolution in the world, and that's what's being imposed on us now. You never talk about the Institute of Pacific Relations, which the Senate, the Guide to Subversive Organizations, and the Senate Judiciary Committee.
You know why we don't? Because you get us all very confused, Gary.
I'm sorry, what?
You keep us all very confused.
Well,
we don't know who. We don't know what.
Send you some documents.
We don't know, Gary. What is the Skull and Bones? Would you tell us that? Can you tell us that?
You're actually serving the Red Chinese by not calling to Leon Panetta's, monuments, the fact that Zach Friend and, person after person, Bruce McPherson receives money from Red Chinese, just like Dianne Feinstein and Swalwell, the fart herd around the world.
Well, I would go along with that. I think China's bought out pretty much everybody, as far as I'm concerned. But I didn't know what the Skull and Bones is. Sometime, Gary, you'll have to give us a lesson on the Skull and Bones. I would like to. Do you know what the Skull and Bones?
Yeah, that fraternity group at Yale. It happens to be one of the Ivy League schools where they have a pretty solid program where just a lot of world leaders, or people who've got the caliber to be a world leader, cycle through either corporate or government. It's part of the old money aristocracy. They join this club.
Do they take them down into the basement and brand them or something?
They got a lot of traditions and things.
There is a weird ritual they apparently do, but I won't describe it on the air. When Gore and GW were campaigning against each other, they were both asked, is it true that you were part of the organization called the Skull and Bones? And they both answered, oh, the secret organization. And they both answered, well, if I answer that question, then it wouldn't be a secret.
Yeah, it just happens to be a lot of prestigious people go through that program at that school, and they go to that.
Not, look, I think every upper echelon university has some similar thing. I'm sure there's something like that at Stanford and at University of Hawaii and Columbia University.
You always try to gather people together and get them to scheme against.
First of all, isn't that the whole reason we went to college in the first place? Is to make contacts.
Yeah.
Not to get educated.
Yeah, and that's
to get contacts.
That's a program and organization that's centered around world politics, geopolitical issues, and so if you want to go into that for your living, your life, that's one of the organizations that you can join to stay interconnected, and that part of a fraternity where you can meet other people of like profession.
I like what Newt Gingrich said about Donald Trump. He says that he knows all about their secret organizations because he's part of them, and that's why they're upset about him running.
Newt Gingrich. All right. Yeah. Anybody else, Billy?
No, nobody else is on the board. They dropped off in the last discussion.
Scared him away at the last conference.
Yeah, okay. Gary got him. Sometime I'd love to sit down with Gary and have him maybe put a big piece of white paper on the wall.
But what Gary brings up, though, is an interesting kind of thread that we've had on this show today, which is the suspicion that there's somebody who's an extraordinary form of governance that's manipulated.
The New World Order.
Yeah. Well, I have a comment in that strain. Really, maybe expanding it a little bit.
Yeah.
There is certainly, there's two situations. One is there's a profoundly intelligent group of people or aliens or whatever who control the world. The other is that we really just are that stupid. And with regards to
I'm going for the latter.
With regards to we really just are that stupid situation. I've got a little allegory because we always look at these situations that gained the military tension between the United States and China, and there's a tendency to sort of see it from our perspective and not see it from theirs, and think that there's nothing we can do. They're building up their military. Meanwhile, we're building up our military. And the allegory I'd like to just introduce is actually with regards to Fidel Castro, notorious for running a police state. Yep. The notoriously paranoid Fidel Castro, who was imprisoning people and torturing people to
killed
to find
his best
out,
friends.
And the other side of that, was there a reason for him to be paranoid? I just looked up CIA.
Bay of Pigs.
I just looked up CIA assassination attempts on Fidel Castro. It took me a minute to add them all up. 632 assassination attempts.
Well, that does not speak very well for our CIA.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just thinking the same thing myself.
Goodness sakes,
that's got to be other insurgency groups and things.
If you were in a situation where you were attempting to survive 632 assassination attempts, would you have a police state? Would you have? Would you be paranoid?
Well, who would you trust? In your police state.
So if we weren't trying to assassinate him all the time, maybe things would have been a little more benign. I just got to beg the question.
And also let me go back to your scenario about either the aliens are in control or we're really that stupid. Let me just point out a couple of things that have taken place recently around the world. For instance, in the Philippines, they have put back into power the Marcos family and the Duterte family again.
That's amazing.
The president and vice president of the Philippines are members of those two families again. Now, here's the other thing.
They should have. Who's the boxer?
Well,
what's the
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. I think he should have been.
Well, he tried. Yeah. He tried. And here's the other example in Israel. Guess who's going to come to power?
Bibi coming back.
Bibi's back again.
Yeah,
he's been indicted, I think, through 3 or 4 times for corruption.
Well, everybody gets indicted these days.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think they actually had the goods on him, but they can't find anybody else to lead the country.
You don't need to have goods on people to indict them anymore. You just indict them, and then you have a show trial.
Yeah.
Okay.
like Stalin did.
And in a year-long campaign to try to find evidence.
Yes, right. It's a strange world we live in, but
Yes, it is.
it's really strange that we somehow allow a guy like Larry Fink to aggregate, collect $10 trillion of our money.
Spend it in China.
And he takes that money and he goes and gives it to China.
Yeah.
And they
What's the
build up
oversight?
their country, and they promise to pay a nice interest. And yet right now, people in China can't get any money out of the bank because the bank doesn't have any money anymore.
Colonel Terry brought up this third impeachment of Donald Trump that's going on with this 1-6 hearings.
Yeah.
I would like to have some hearings on what the hell BlackRock's, pardon my French, what BlackRock is doing with the $10 trillion it's investing over in China.
That would be a story.
And but there should be a law. I don't know, maybe I'm naive and stupider than I thought. But there should be a law where, if you've got a pension fund of American, investors, it should be invested in something maybe in America.
Well, the laws used to be really strict. And then they've got weakened in the 80s, and that's what drove a lot of the hostile takeovers because they were actually using the pension funds to drive, the capture of the company.
Yeah. I just feel like we spend all this time around the world helping interests that aren't helping the United States.
That want to eat us alive.
And instead, what we should be doing is investing in Canada and investing in Mexico and the Caribbean, countries around us that help protect us.
Postmodernism that Janti brought up earlier.
We should be a little bit precise. BlackRock's not investing $10 trillion in China.
No,
BlackRock has $10 trillion under management that they invest all over the world.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
But they're
Most
also
of it in
making
China.
a bunch of investments in China at the moment with our money, which I don't think should be legal.
This is they were also investing in the Chinese military. Trump ended that. Biden is ending that sanction. So,
well, guess what,
quite right.
fellows? It's over.
Well, not till
As
next
the
week.
drums will tell you, we have run out of gas.
Sign up for the newsletter, ChinaWatch.com.
ChinaWatch.com.
ChinaWatchRadio.com.
ChinaWatchRadio.com.
Thank you, Jonty, for keeping us correct.
He's our keel of a ship.
Yes, he is. Flight 1080. Flight 1080 is coming up next. I want to thank Susan Simon, who ran the board for us in the other room. Thank you so much for participating. A reminder, you're listening to AM 1080, KSCO, Santa Cruz, Salinas, Monterey, and it's coming up on 4 o'clock.